Hey guys, it's Nell, and for today's video I've gotten a lot of requests from people to do a stitch with me style video, so I thought that's what we would do today. I don't know, I've never done a stitch with me video, and to be honest I'm kind of nervous. I'm not really nervous. I don't know, I don't get really very nervous doing my regular videos, but I definitely feel a little unsure about this because I'm not sure what to talk about. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well. It's Saturday afternoon, and if you can hear my kids screaming and making all sorts of noise out there, my husband is having them pick up and start dinner and all of that good stuff while I'm in here stitching. I'm in my craft room. I am working on my stocking, obviously, as you can see. And for this project, I am occasionally going to have the pattern where you can see it, but since this is such a complicated design and you don't have the thread key, I feel okay about that, so please don't flag me for copyright. I just don't really know how to do this without referencing my pattern from time to time, but anyway, we've had a good Saturday. It's been kind of busy. My boys had a soccer game this morning, and so we did soccer and then came home, cleaned the house a little bit. I went grocery shopping as I usually do, and then yeah, we've had a quiet afternoon. My husband has mowed the lawn, hopefully, cross your fingers, maybe for the last time this season. We're not sure. It's starting to get pretty chilly at night here, but sometimes you have to keep mowing right through kind of mid-October. Hopefully though, hopefully this could be the last time he has to mow. That would be nice. 5, 6, 7 more. Okay. I'm gonna talk to myself occasionally as I'm stitching. I hope that's okay. I have to count out loud sometimes. You know how it is. So I thought of a couple different things we could talk about. You know what? I'm gonna adjust this up a tiny bit. For those of you who've asked to see my, what is this called? My table stand in action. Here it is, and you can see that I can actually rotate it up or down depending on where I want it. And then my roll of frame just sits right on top of it, and I can flip it easily to get to the back side. I really love working on this thing, and it's been a game changer. That's still a little too high. That's good. I hope that's still in frame. So yeah, it's been a good Saturday. I thought, you know, speaking of grocery shopping, I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, how we do food in our house, how we do meal planning, grocery budget, how often do I cook, do I like cooking? And so I guess we could talk about that for a few minutes. I am definitely a person who loves to have a system. You may have noticed. I like to be organized. I like to have a way that I always do things. I am not a person who likes to kind of innovate frequently. I want to perfect a system and then stick to it for as long as it serves me, for as long as possible. And I have been using our current system for meal planning, grocery shopping, cooking, all of that. I've been using this system now for almost 2 years, and it has worked really well for us, and it's really been sustainable long term, which I think is the key to any system. If you're going to implement any sort of system, it needs to be sustainable long term. Hang on. 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 again. And so the way I work it is, I do enjoy cooking, but I would not enjoy having to cook every single day. That is not my style. If you like to cook every day, bless your heart, and you are my inspiration, because I am not there yet. I didn't really learn to cook growing up. I am predominantly, I'm gonna scoot this down a little. I am predominantly a self-taught cooker, chef. I don't want to call myself a chef. I taught myself to cook mostly. My mom didn't really cook a ton growing up. She did cook, but she didn't enjoy it. Let's put it that way. And so anything that she could do to kind of expedite the process, make it easier for her. You know, I grew up, we didn't really eat a whole lot of like homemade soups. You know, when I ate soup, it was from a can. I ate, you know, Campbell's canned soup. There's nothing wrong with Campbell's canned soup. It's delicious. But I didn't really grow up eating a lot of, you know, homemade from scratch kind of meals. And the funny thing is that now as an adult, as a wife and a mom and just a person, I really like cooking from scratch. It tastes better, it costs less, it's better for you, and I enjoy it. If you don't like cooking from scratch and you absolutely hate it, then by all means don't. Find what works for you. Whoops. But I do enjoy cooking from scratch, but I never really had anyone to teach me. And I've learned mostly through trial and error, through trying new recipes, trying new techniques, discovering, you know, things for myself. But anyway, I digress. So I don't like to cook every single day. So when I meal plan, I typically, in a normal week, will plan about 4 meals a week that I plan to cook. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, but that's key for me, you know. And then on the days that I don't cook, we typically eat leftovers, or what I like to call like our easy meals, which is, you know, grilled cheese sandwiches, quesadillas, frozen chicken nuggets, you know, easy, always have the stuff on hand and doesn't take more than 15 minutes to prep. But, you know, 4 days out of the week, I do try to cook. And the way I meal plan is we meal plan 1 week at a time. I typically do it Saturday morning right before I go grocery shopping, because I like to have my husband's input, and he's usually home on Saturday mornings. If he's not home, then I have to do it by myself, and I really don't like coming up with meal ideas on my own. I really need, you know, other people's thoughts and input. But anyway, we meal plan on Saturday mornings typically, and you can see how I start my threads. This is interesting. You guys are going to get to see how I actually stitch. Anyway, we meal plan on Saturday mornings, and we plan our meals for the following week, Sunday through Saturday. And I cook. I told you I cook 4 days a week, and the days I cook are Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday and Friday. Wednesdays and Saturdays are off days where we either have leftovers or my husband and I go on a date, usually on Saturdays. Give me a second. 3 to 8. Okay, and so I plan to cook on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And the way I do it, my system, and some of you are going to be like, wow, this girl, she's a little bit OCD. Yeah, I am a little bit. I am a little bit of a perfectionist, but I have a different theme for each of those 4 days. And the reason I have a theme is because my husband and I like to eat a lot of different kinds of food from all over the world. My kids are learning, but they're little and sometimes they can be picky. But hopefully just over a lifetime of having, you know, being exposed to lots of different kinds of food, they will learn to like lots. But anyway, I get bored really easy if I try to make the same thing, you know, every week or even every other week or even every month. I think I would get bored too quickly. So I have a theme for each day that I cook because it forces me to be creative. It forces me to look up new recipes or try new things, and it just helps me. So Monday is soup, salad, and sandwich day. Soup, salad, or sandwich, not all three, usually one. And so I will either make a soup, usually in the fall and winter time, or I'll make a salad, what I would call a dinner salad, meaning that it has protein in the salad, either through beans or meat or some kind of protein, so that you can eat a salad as a meal, not just as a side, if that makes sense. So soup, salad, or sandwiches. I have a lot of different kinds of yummy sandwiches I like to make. Dinner sandwiches, not just like peanut butter and jelly or like ham sandwiches, although those are delicious. These are like, you know, BLTs. I have these party sandwiches that I make in the oven that are really delicious. I might do chicken salad, especially in the summertime. I love chicken salad sandwiches. So these are sandwiches that are a little bit more, I don't know, tuna melts, a little bit more involved than just your typical like lunchtime sandwich. But anyway, so Monday is soup, salad, or sandwiches. And we pick a soup, salad, or sandwich that we want for that week. Give me a second. Back 4 and do 6. And that's what we do on Mondays. On Tuesdays are Taco Tuesday, like Mexican food. And so, Mexican food, I should say. Mexican food or Central or South American food might be a better statement, because I lived for a year plus in Peru. And I love Peruvian food, and so sometimes I will throw some Peruvian food in there on a Tuesday. Usually it's Mexican inspired, but you know, Mexican, Tex-Mex, Peruvian, something kind of Central or South American inspired on Tuesdays for Taco Tuesday. It's not always tacos. A lot of times it's not tacos actually, but it just seemed to make sense to me to put it on a Tuesday because that's Taco Tuesday. And so that's Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday is leftovers, or if there aren't any leftovers, which there are always leftovers, so that's a moot point, but Wednesday is leftovers or one of those easy meals, as I've mentioned before. And then Thursday is Asian, so that's when we eat Chinese or Japanese. I lived in Japan for 2.5 years, from when I was about 10 to when I was almost 13. My family lived in Tokyo, so I love Japanese food, and so we might have Japanese, we might make Chinese. My husband's an army brat, and his family lived in South Korea for many years. He actually was born in South Korea, and then his family moved back to the States, and then he actually graduated from high school back in South Korea again. They moved back. But anyway. So, you know, we'll make Korean food. We love bulgogi, bibimbap. You know, Thursday is Asian. Stir fry, noodles, you know, sesame chicken, yakisoba if we're doing Japanese. I've never yet attempted to make sushi. That feels a little bit above the limits of my skills at this time, but never say never. Maybe someday we'll learn to make sushi. So that's Thursday. Thursday's Asian. And then Friday is Italian or Mediterranean. We love Italian food. Obviously, we're Americans. All Americans love Italian food. We should really call it American Italian though, because I'm not sure how pure Italian my Italian cooking is. But we do Italian or Mediterranean, and we say Mediterranean also because we both really love Greek food. And I have a delicious recipe for these really easy chicken gyros, I think is how you're supposed to pronounce them, but gyros, you know. They're just really delicious, and I make tzatziki sauce from scratch, and it's not hard to make. It's really yum, and we love Greek food too. So Friday is Italian or Mediterranean, and that's my meal planning. And so what we do is we plan those 4 meals. Occasionally it is my turn to cook on a Sunday. We have family that live close to us, and we rotate every 3 weeks to someone's house for dinner, and we take turns preparing that dinner. And usually on a Sunday is when I pull out more my typical American style cooking, things like roasts, casseroles, you know, that sort of thing, hamburgers. And although we have been known to do hamburgers on Mondays as a sandwich, because they are kind of sandwiches. We classify pizza, personal pizzas. We make homemade personal pizzas a lot, and those can either go on Monday as a sandwich because they're like an open-faced sandwich, or a Friday as Italian because we like to do those a lot. But anyway, again, I digress. When it's my turn on Sundays to cook, and I'm usually cooking for anywhere between like 12 and 18 people, that's when I usually do typical kind of American cooking, casseroles, roasts, things like that, steak and potatoes, you know, that sort of thing. But we don't eat that very often. We are much more often eating soup, salad, sandwiches, Mexican, Asian, and Italian or Mediterranean. And that's kind of that's how I meal plan. I find that having that system means that I actually stick to it, and I don't hate cooking. I get excited to try new recipes, and I get excited to try, different things I've never done before. Occasionally, if I find a recipe that doesn't fit into one of those 4 categories, I'll just throw it into the rotation regardless. Like I found this recipe for a pan-seared, pan-fried tilapia with a butter lemon sauce, and it was so delicious, although I failed multiple times making the butter lemon sauce. That's a story for another day. But anyway, the fish was delicious. And we don't really eat a lot of seafood, and so there's not really a good place to put that in my regular rotation, but when I'm feeling like some yummy fish, we'll just throw it in on any random day. So yeah, that's how I meal plan. And then we create our shopping list, obviously, from the meal plan. We have some things that we know we always are gonna need. Hold on, I need a new color of thread and I can't remember. I'll try to hide it so you can't see it. Oh, 3 strands, half stitch, gold brown. Okay. I'm going to continue to talk to myself. I hope you don't mind. I talk to myself all the time when I'm stitching. Where was I? Oh, grocery list. We know like what our staples are: bread, milk, eggs. Luckily, we haven't had to buy eggs a lot recently because my boy's great aunt, my mother-in-law's sister, has a whole bunch of hens, and she gives us dozens and dozens of fresh eggs all the time right now, which is amazing. But you know what I mean. The kind of staples that you know you need always. Butter, cheese, bread, chips, because my kids do like to have chips with their lunch. Chips or pretzels, the typical kind of stuff. So we put that on the list, and then anything we need for our meals that we have planned for the following week. And then my biggest tip with grocery budgeting and sticking to your budget is number 1, to meal plan. And I know you've heard that a million times, but it's really true. So number 1, to meal plan, and number 2 is to try everything you can to only shop 1 day a week, 1 time a week. And that's some of you are already doing that, no problem, especially if you don't have big families. For some of you, if you have really large families, that might not be possible because you might not be able to fit into your refrigerator everything you need for the week. But I think for most of us, it's very doable to only shop once a week. And I tell you, when you shop once a week with a list, with a meal plan, it's so much easier to just stick with what you need, just stick to your budget, and we find we don't go over budget typically. And so what I'll do is I usually go to Aldi first. We live in the Midwest, and we have Aldi near us, which we love. We're so grateful. Aldi has, if you're not from the Midwest and you don't know what Aldi is actually a German supermarket chain that has really gained a lot of traction here in the U.S. because my goodness, this is hard to get my needle under. It's because I'm using a really thick needle because I'm using 3 strands on my needle right now. There we go. And it's great because it's very, very low prices because it's all Aldi brand food. They do sometimes carry some name brands, but that's kind of the exception, and it's like usually a special if they have name brands. But they carry all their Aldi brand food, which is extremely affordable, and they usually only carry 1 or 2 of any kind of thing. So you have much less selection, and they don't carry everything that you might need in their store always, but they do carry probably 90% of our essentials that we need, and for a much lower price than even like Walmart. So I always go to Aldi first and buy everything I can at Aldi. Dark brown, cross stitch, 2 strands. Buy everything I can there, and then whatever, after I get out of Aldi, I check my list again, and whatever else I need that I couldn't get there, I go to Walmart on my way home. And I pick up the last few things that I need in Walmart, and then I go home. And that is it for the entire week. I will not typically go grocery shopping again until the following Saturday. Obviously, if there's some sort of catastrophe, we forgot it was someone's birthday and we need a cake mix, or, you know, if there's an extenuating circumstance, we will obviously have my husband usually run to the grocery store on his way home from work. But that is the exception, not the rule. And I think probably in the last 6 months, that's only happened maybe twice. So we really, really try to only shop once a week on Saturdays. And that allows us to kind of stick to our budget. Because if you think about it, if you're not in a store, you can't spend the money, right? Or you know what I mean. I know you can shop online, but if you're only grocery shopping once a week, you're not being tempted by impulse buys several other times during the week. It seems easier to stay on budget and not buy unnecessary things. And it forces us to, create a shopping list since we meal plan. And it's kind of reduced the number of impulse buys that I make because we're all susceptible to it. Those supermarkets are masters in getting you to buy things you don't really need. And so, shopping once a week with a list, sticking to the list, has allowed us to keep our grocery budget in check, which is important for us right now. My husband's a medical resident and they do not make very much compared to how many hours they are working and their level of training and how much we spent putting him through school. They make barely anything. So, we're basically students, essentially. We're still living on almost a student budget. So we have to be really careful about that. And right now, our grocery budget is about $600 a month for our family of 5. And when I say $600, that includes food, toiletries, paper products for the home, cleaning products, diapers. That's, all of the stuff you need to keep your household running is our grocery budget. And that's about $600 a month. I'd say, so that's about $150 a week is what I spend on a Saturday. Usually about half of that at Aldi and half of that at Walmart, even though 75% of what I buy comes from Aldi. It's because Aldi's prices are so low. Yay for Aldi. But yeah, and that's how we do our food in our house. So, once again, have a system that works, meal plan for sure, and then try really, really hard to only shop one day a week. And you'll be amazed. It's not difficult. And every once in a while, I have days where I planned to cook and something happened, or I'm feeling really exhausted or cranky and I really just don't want to cook that day, and we'll, order a pizza. That does happen sometimes. We are normal. I'm a normal person. I have bad days, but it doesn't happen very often. And, it's fun every once in a while, but I try really hard to stick to my plan. So that's how I do meal planning, grocery shopping, cooking in our home. As far as recipes, I'm on this weird mission to find the very best recipe of everything that I make. So for example, my most recent 2 successes, I should say. I found the best cinnamon roll recipe I've ever had. It tastes legitimately like cinnamon rolls. They are gooey and decadent and not dry and fluffy and cinnamony and just amazing. I'll try to link it in the description box if I remember. If I don't remember, someone remind me in the comments and I'll add it. But yeah, I love that cinnamon roll recipe. And then what I was trying to say is I had been on this quest to find the perfect cinnamon roll recipe. And I finally found it after trying probably 40 or 50. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration. Probably trying at least 5 or 6 different cinnamon roll recipes before I found this one and fell in love with it and felt like I had found my perfect recipe, and now I can just do that one forever and never have to look for another recipe again. Does that make sense? Finding the perfect one. Anyway, my other recent triumph was finding the best Mexican rice and refried beans recipe from scratch, so that when I make Mexican food, we can have, sides like beans and rice with our meal, and I can make them from scratch. And I was on a mission to find the perfect beans and rice recipe. Mexican beans and rice. Not Brazilian beans and rice, and I'm still kind of on a quest for the perfect Brazilian beans and black beans and rice. But this is for like Mexican style rice and refried beans. And I found them from 2 different websites. I will link them if I can remember to do so. But they're both really easy. The rice you make on the stovetop, and it takes a while to cook, but it's kind of one of those things where you start it and then you leave it for like 45 minutes. And then the refried beans, oops, that's a half stitch. The refried beans, you make in the Instant Pot. So it doesn't require you to soak your beans overnight. It's super quick. Again, takes probably all in about an hour to make them. But an hour to make refried beans from scratch without soaking is darn good in my opinion. And I can do that. I can take an hour to make some refried beans because they're really yummy too. Anyway, so that's kind of how I do food. I am a systems girl. I like having my systems. Anyway, if you have a great way that you like to do food in your house, either meal planning or grocery shopping, budgeting, cooking, by all means, please leave it in the comments, because just because I have a system that works for me doesn't mean I don't want to know what other people do. Who knows? There may come a day where my system doesn't work for me as well, and I might need some ideas. My favorite places to go for recipes, I am a die-hard Pioneer Woman fan. I have every single one of her cookbooks, except her most recent one. I don't have that one yet, but I'll probably ask for that for Christmas. I just love her style of cooking. It's real cooking, it's from scratch, but it is, family friendly, kid friendly, usually not too difficult, and it just always tastes delicious. She is not low carb, she is not sugar free, she is not gluten free. She cooks, in kind of a more traditional way, and it might not be the healthiest ever, but darn it if it isn't the most delicious. And I love it. And we don't have any like food allergies in our family, any food sensitivities to worry about. So I love the Pioneer Woman. I get a lot of my recipes from her. I also love a couple of websites, blogs. I love Mel's Kitchen Cafe, Mel with an M, not an N like my name. Mel, M-E-L. Mel's Kitchen Cafe. She has great food that's typically pretty simple, easy to make, kid-friendly, family-friendly, and delicious. And then my other favorite is a blog called Damn Delicious, D-A-M-N, Delicious, damndelicious.com. And it's a cute name. And she also, her thing is like, it needs to be quick, it needs to be yummy, it needs to be healthy, and my kids need to eat it. And she's got lots of great recipes. Our favorite, chicken tikka masala, which we will sometimes make on Asian night. That's Indian food, but close enough. Thai-in Indian food, I think, can tie in with Asia, greater Asia. Her chicken tikka masala recipe is scrumptious, and it's so easy. And I just buy, naan from Aldi. Aldi has great packaged naan that we buy, and then we have that for dinner. And now I want chicken tikka masala. Now I want it right now. I love her recipe. So that's Damn Delicious. And again, I will try to link as much of this as I can remember down below. But if there's something that you hear me say that you really want the recipe for and I don't link it, I probably just forgot. So remind me in the comments. I read every single comment on my videos. So remind me in the comment and I'll try to add it. All right, so that was cooking. Let's see, what else can we talk about? It's 5:15. We can keep going. Well, since I'm stitching and you're actually watching me stitch, let's talk about how I got into stitching and my kind of style of stitching. You're probably getting a good idea just watching me, but my very first cross stitch piece I ever did was when we lived in Japan. We went to an all-girls Catholic private school while we were there, because it was in English. It was a British school called ISSH, International School of the Sacred Heart in Tokyo, and that's where I went to school, and there was an after-school club for crafts. I hope that didn't shake the camera. Sorry if it did. For crafts. There was a craft club, and I love crafts. I've always loved crafts. And so I joined that craft club, and that's when I made my very first cross stitch. One of our projects was a little cross-stitched rose that I still have. I stitched it on that giant, like 6-count or like 8-count Clostern, I think it's called, fabric. It's hilarious. It's huge, 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 huge X's. But I did a pretty good job. I was looking at it the last time I was out in Utah visiting my parents. Sorry, I got a knot. How did that happen? I'm not even stitching. I was just stranding my thread and... Okay, where's the needle? That's when I did my very first cross stitch piece ever. There we go. And then I didn't really stitch anymore after that. We did other kinds of crafts, but I don't think I ever cross stitched again until I was probably 14, maybe? I think about 14 or 15. And I found in my mom's old sewing box a cross stitch project that she had started years before, probably late 80s, early 90s. And it was meant to be a birth record. You know, those birth record sampler things that were super popular back then. It was a kit from like a big box store, Michael's. It was probably Janlin or Dimensions or Busilla or something like that. Anyway, so I found this, and she had started it and was only about halfway through it, and I asked her if I could finish it, and she said sure. And so I did, and I finished the whole thing. I'm gonna have to trim those because they're not even at the end. But that kit is where I basically taught myself to stitch, and it's the way that I stitch to this day. So you'll notice I don't use a loop method. When I need this, I need 4 strands on my needle. When I need 4 strands, I go ahead and pull 4 strands from the skein, and I pull them individually, because I find when I pull them individually, I get a much smoother stitch. And I don't use the loop method. I use the method that was probably recommended in the kit, and I just started doing it that way, where to start your stitches, you either run your needle under some other stitches to kind of bury your thread, which is what I'm going to do now, or you can stitch over your tail. So if there aren't any other stitches where you're putting in your first stitch, you can find a place on the pattern that has 2 or 3 X's in a row, and you put those in first, and as you stitch them, you stitch over your tail on the back side of your work, so that it locks your thread in place. So I have never used knots, I've never used waist knots, I've never used pin stitches, I've never used anything other than my little stitch over your tail method that probably I learned from the instructions in that birth sampler kit. And when I finish, obviously, I run my needle under other stitches, and that's it. So there are usually no knots on the back of my work. If there are knots, they're unintentional knots that happened on accident. But yeah, and I stitch a stab and jab method. I don't do the sewing method, mostly because I feel like the sewing method works best if you stitch in hand. I know it's possible to do the sewing method with frames, but it's just too much for my brain to handle, and I like to have a frame. You can see I don't need my fabric like drum tight. I'm okay with having a little bit of give in my fabric, but I do like having it on a frame. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's right out. And I, when I stitched that little birth sampler at 15 or whatever, I think I was using an old wooden hoop that my mom gave me. I graduated from hoops pretty quickly because I hated how they like crunched the edges of my fabric. It like crunched it around the circle. You know what I mean. I think the next thing I went to were scroll frames, but not nice roll-a-frame ones. They were like the cheap ones you could get at Michael's, which are perfectly fine if they work for you, like the slotted ones where you slide your fabric in and then you roll it. They weren't my favorite, but that's the next thing I went to. And then I found Q-snaps, and I still use Q-snaps to this day. Love Q-snaps. And then I found roll-a-frame, and roll-a-frame, scroll frames, I love. And I will probably continue using Q-snaps and roll-a-frames until the day I die, because they are my favorite. But yeah, so that was kind of when I got back into cross stitching when I was about 15. And I did cross stitch for, you know, maybe a year after I did that birth sampler. I got kind of bitten by the bug and I did other kits. I've only ever done kits, or I had only ever done kits up until I was about 21. But anyway, I finished that, did a little bit more cross stitching, and then because I was kind of dabbling in many different kinds of crafts at the time, then I got really into crochet, and I crocheted for about 3 or 4 years, almost exclusively. Didn't really do a whole lot of other crafts. Really enjoyed crochet. Made a huge Afghan, made all kinds of stuff. Made myself a shawl, crocheted shawl, and I was doing pretty fancy crochet. I even dabbled a little bit in lace crochet with the pearl cotton. That was a little too much for my brain, but I enjoyed crochet. And then I got kind of tired of crochet, and that's when I went back to cross stitch around when I was about 20. And that's when I discovered the online cross stitch forums back in the early, I don't know, not early, but the 2000s and the 2010s, before YouTube or even before Facebook groups were a thing, when Facebook was really just like people. There were cross stitch forums. There were forums dedicated to cross stitch, and I had a live journal account. Did anyone else do live journal? I had a live journal account that I kept, and on live journal they actually had like forums, and there was one that was cross stitch, and so I would post on there. I had a couple of friends who I would talk back and forth with, and that forum, that live journal cross stitch forum, is when I really discovered, this is probably about 2008, is when I discovered like cross stitch designers, people, cross stitch projects that weren't a kit from a big box store where you could order a pattern and fabric and threads all separately, and that there were people who designed patterns. And the first one I did was a Lizzie Kate Halloween piece. I still have it. I've shown it before. I actually took it apart the other day because I'd really like to refinish it in a different way. But I finished that in probably 2008 or 2009, and that was my first non-kit project that I ever did, and I finished it and I was totally hooked. That was it. That was all she wrote. I started going to cross stitch stores as soon as I discovered there were actual cross stitch stores that just sold like cross stitch stuff. I was living in Florida at the time, and I went to the cross stitch cupboard in Fort Lauderdale. Oh, loved that place. That was like my happy place. And that's when I really got hooked, and I kept cross stitching pretty much from that point on. I haven't really done much of any other craft. I dabble here and there, as a lot of us do, but cross stitch has been my one true love since that time, and never looked back. So that's kind of how I got into stitching. And yeah, so my style, like I said, I'm a stab and jab stitcher. I've tried the sewing method. I did a whole small project once in hand because I wanted to just try it and see what it was like. And I stitched it in hand, and I also stitched it using the sewing method. And I didn't hate it. It just was really slow for me. And I think probably because I had never done it before, and I fully recognize that. That's probably why. I'm sure I would get faster with time, but I just didn't enjoy it. Sorry, I'm going to start putting in some of this light around the lantern and the snow because it's all kind of the same colors. And I need to see what colors I need. I need that red star. Hold that thought. Which is a pale yellow. This one. I need the red W. Red W. Red W. Oh, there it is. Golden yellow. 3 strands. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And then I need white. Okay. Those are the colors of the snow and the lantern around the little girl. Okay. Sorry, thank you for letting me do that. I think it's 3 strands for each of those. Hold on. 3 strands half stitch, 4 strands half stitch for the pale yellow, and 3 strands for the white. Okay, So let's do then, let's do the W's first. Golden yellow, 3 strands, half stitch. Okay, I'm back. Where was I? Oh, yes. So I tried stitching in hand and I tried the sewing method, and I can see why some people love it. I could see that it is very fast if that's the way you normally stitch. Because it's not the way I normally stitch, I did not find it to be faster. I found myself really struggling to get my tension right. And like I said, I know that would come with practice, but I just didn't really feel motivated to keep doing it. I had a system that worked really well for me, and I stitch pretty quickly normally. Right now I'm stitching really slowly because I'm trying to talk to you guys at the same time as stitching. So I'm going pretty slow for me, but I'm a pretty fast stitcher, which is, you know, a lot of you have asked, how do you get so many things done? I think honestly, I think I'm just a fast stitcher. I am a floss licker till the end. Floss licking to the end. I know people think that's gross. I've been doing it since I was 15 and it works fine for me. Let's see what else. Because I stitch on frames, I am a stab and jab stitcher. Like I said, not a sewing method stitcher. Nothing wrong with the sewing method. It just wasn't for me. I typically, when I start and stop, like I said, I don't use the loop method. I don't use waist knots. I like to strand all of my threads separately and then put it back together. I find it gives it a smoother, meaning I don't pull, like if I'm stitching with 2 strands, I don't pull 2 strands at a time from the actual skein. I will pull one, set it down, pull a second one, set it down, and then put them back together. Does that make sense? I just find it makes it smoother. I get less knots. It looks tidier, and you know, I have a bit of a thing about tidiness. Yeah, so that's how I started stitching. That's my kind of style of stitching. Like I said, I'm going super slow right now, but I've never done a stitch with me before, and I hope this is fun for you guys. Let's see, what else should we talk about? I don't know. My voice is getting kind of tired. Maybe I'll stitch for about 5 more minutes and be done. I don't know. How long do people usually make these Stitch With Me videos? I don't know how someone would sit and just talk for hours and hours and hours. Although I definitely do that in my regular videos. What's my problem? I don't know. 2, 2, 2, and then 1, 1. Let's see. I don't really want to talk about current events. Part of me wants to just disappear off of social media until like January. I hate election years. I really, really hate them. I hate how angry and mean people get, and I care about politics, I do, but neither of the big political parties really represent me very well. I think I've mentioned before, I'm kind of libertarian in my political leanings. Anyway, we don't need to talk about politics. I don't want to talk about politics. I also really don't want to talk about the coronavirus. Ugh. Although, this might be interesting to some of you. I did read a very fascinating article from a very reputable source just in the last week. This guy, I'm going to jump back up here because I got to come down with this yellow. A guy went through, 6 months later on the coronavirus. What do we know about it that we didn't know, 6 months ago? What have we learned in the last 6 months? And his article was mostly about what do we know about how it's transmitted and how to keep yourself and your family safe. And he said that from all of the anecdotal evidence, from all of the, the studies that have been done and, what we've been doing and what's working and what's not working, it would appear that the coronavirus is not transmitted through contact, through touching something that someone else has touched and then touching your face or your eyes or anything. That typically is how things like the common cold are transmitted, but it would appear and again, this is just their speculation based on the evidence now 6 months in, that is not the primary method of transmission. It doesn't mean you can't get it that way. It means that it's harder for you to get it that way than the way I'm about to tell you. So if it's not touch, if it's not transmitted through touch, what about, droplet transmission, breathing in droplets? It also does not appear to be droplet transmitted. It appears to be transmitted through aerosols, which, if you know anything about epidemiology or, diseases, aerosol transmission means the ultra fine particles that you breathe out that are not stopped by a mask. Now, before you panic, the good news is that unlike other aerosol transmitted viruses, for example, things like the measles or the smallpox, unlike those which are highly virulent, meaning that you come in contact with it and boom, you're sick, it would appear that the coronavirus, according to this article and according to all the studies, it would appear that the coronavirus is a little bit more fragile than those viruses, meaning that you need to be exposed to a larger quantity of those aerosol particles before you will get sick. So, for example, this is very simplistic, but if you were only to come in contact with one of them, you would likely not get sick. Whereas you might with like smallpox, which is incredibly contagious. You only need like a very few virus particles before your body becomes sick. That does not appear to be the case with coronavirus, which is why some people think it's not as contagious. It is contagious, but it's not as virulent because you need a much higher viral load to become sick. At least that's the best guess at this point. So that being said, how do we prevent it? And the man who wrote the article said basically what this means is that you can stop wiping down all of your surfaces, everything that comes into your house with, sanitizer or, Clorox wipes or whatever. If you feel better doing it, then by all means keep doing it safely. Please don't put bleach on your food. But, if you feel better about continuing to wipe everything down that comes into your home, that's fine. But just know that the likelihood of you getting the coronavirus through a surface, like things you bring into your home, or through your hands, is actually a lot lower than we initially thought. Keep washing your hands because it's good hygiene, but so you can stop that if you would like to. Obviously you don't have to. Like I said, if it makes you feel better to keep wiping everything down, then do it. But you don't have to. And the best way to protect yourself is to maintain social distance, that 6 feet rule, because it is aerosol transmitted. If you're not getting close enough to people to breathe in their particles, you're not going to get it. And still, masks, interestingly enough. I know there's a whole debate on masks, and I don't want to get into it right now, but I am the wife of a doctor, and so I think you might know which way my leanings lie. I tend to follow the science, and you can call me a sheep if you want to, but wearing a mask is not that big of a sacrifice for me. And it turns out that it's not only protecting others. Wearing a 2-layer cotton mask is actually going to stop more of those aerosolized particles than going without one, obviously. It might not stop all of them, but it might stop enough to where I don't get sick because of the required viral load to get sick from coronavirus. So there's my interesting tidbit of information. Again, I am not an expert and I am not a medical professional, although I am married to one. And he, from reading all of the literature on it and all the studies that have been done, it seems that those are the best ways to keep yourself safe. Social distance and wear your mask. Protects you, it protects others, but it also protects you, perhaps more than we thought it would, by reducing the amount of virus that is able to get introduced to your system. So, but again, you do you, boo. I don't want to start an argument. I really don't like it when people fight over this stuff. It makes me very uncomfortable and I really dislike it. But there's my 2 cents. That's the latest coronavirus research that I read. It was a very well written article, and he had all the evidence backing everything up, and I'm all about evidence-based. So anyway, interesting things about the coronavirus. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. I hope some of you have been able to get back to sort of quasi-normal life. If you're not back to quasi-normal life and you're losing your marbles, I wish I could just give you a big air hug. Not a real hug, because that wouldn't be social distancing, but a nice big air hug, because I know this is super hard. And I know especially people who are high risk or who are very nervous and being very conservative about it feel extremely isolated right now. And I just want you to know that I think of you, and I want you to be safe, and I want you to feel safe, and I want you to feel happy, but I also don't want you to feel alone or lonely. So maybe this Stitch With Me video will be a little bit like we got together to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and, you know, chat for a while. Let's see. I think I'm gonna call it a day there. I think that's probably long enough for my first stitch along. I got this this bottom part of the fence put in. That is actually, yeah, this right here is the edge of the toe, so the toe will come down like this. So I'm getting close to the end, guys. I can see the finish line. So put that in, and then I put in all of this yellow for the light. Thanks so much for stitching with me, guys. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and if you'd like to see more of these sorts of videos where we just sit and chat. And yeah, we'll maybe do another one real soon. Okay, guys, take care. See you soon. Bye.